Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. If you Google my name, you get Bell Ford dealership in Phoenix, Arizona, just in case you're looking for a Ford. This is a great country, just a great country. Here you have I'm speaking at a convening about the digital future. Who have an electric typewriter in my office in Washington, and I actually use it. Our IT director comes in periodically to my office, stares at the typewriter, and says, "That thing is going down one of these days." I think she plans to kidnap it. This conference is timely and important because we have to assert, I'm speaking from the standpoint of the museum field, and just so we're clear, the museum field is everything A to Z, art museums to zoos, and all institutions in between. And as if I weren't big enough, I'm being projected even bigger on this screen. I would tell the videographer, focus on the audience. It's much more interesting. I'm speaking on behalf of the museum field, and this conference is important because we need to assert the educational role of museums in our country today. I can't tell you how many times people have said to me, "Ford, what do you mean when you say that a museum is an educational institution?" People have said to me, "Ford, what would a museum educator do?" I think it's all summed up by Wayne Clough, the Secretary of the Smithsonian, who said to me a few years ago, people, referring to his own institution, people think we hang stuff on walls here. And that's a source of frustration to him. Yes, they do hang stuff on walls, but also, as he points out, they're one of the 3 largest astrophysical research organizations in the world, and nobody ever brings that up. So we sort of, in the museum field, have hidden our light under a bushel, and we need to do a much better job of doing that. Museums everywhere need to seize the moment when the education of young learners is being examined from all angles, and when the statistics show that American students continue to fall behind their counterparts around the world, when we are, in fact, at a learning crossroads. First of all, museums need to assert their role as essential educational institutions in our society today, and that may seem like an unnecessary endeavor, but the truth is that museums are viewed, as the Secretary Clough pointed out, they're viewed as amenities, not as essential educational institutions. Some of the statistics associated with museums' commitment to education are missed or dismissed as being irrelevant. I've discovered that too few people realize that museums spend more than $2 billion a year on educational programming in our country. That's an astounding amount. Or that the typical museum devotes 3/4 of its education budget to K-12 students. Museums receive more than 55 million visits each year from students in school groups in this country. And these visits are now extensions of the classroom and tied to specific state educational standards, a far cry from the romp through the galleries that I remember from my own childhood visits to a museum. Of course, that was a different century. Museums provide more than 18 million instructional hours to K-12 students in our country, such as guided tours for students, staff visits to schools, and school outreach through science vans, traveling exhibits, and professional development for teachers. And museums are poised to do much, much more. Now is the time for museums to think out of the box, to reach out to unexpected partners, to engage with community leaders and funders, to ally themselves with change agents in the field of K-12 education, and to powerfully demonstrate the essential role that museums are going to play in imagining how our children will be educated both in school and out of school in the 21st century. AAM Center for the Future of Museums, one of our initiatives led by Elizabeth Merritt, is doing groundbreaking work helping the museum field engage with the challenges that our K-12 educational system faces today. The center organized a convening in Washington in the fall of 2013, along with the Henry Ford in Dearborn, Michigan, bringing together major players from foundations, from government agencies, educational organizations, think tanks, and nonprofits that are focused on education. The result was what I think is an important report entitled "The Future of Education, Museums and the Learning Ecosystem." That report is available free of charge at our website, www.aam-us.org. One of the essays in the report is by Greg Baer, executive director of the Grable Foundation in Pittsburgh, who participated in the convening, and it's titled A City-Level Approach to Remake Learning. And it is a glimpse of the future of learning, and I would like to read a bit of it to you. He writes, "Here in Pittsburgh, new pioneers, gamers, roboticists, technologists, and designers are working alongside educators in and out of schools to inspire and provoke creativity and curiosity among children and youth. And we're doing it in a new way," he writes, "through a deliberate network of citywide partnerships that knit together the expertise of hundreds of educators, artists, and innovators. But this hub of learning innovation is one of the first of its kind in the nation. Hundreds of people, projects, and organizations are working together to remake learning in the greater Pittsburgh region. They represent schools, museums, libraries, after-school programs, community centers, higher education institutions, the private sector, and the philanthropic community, a veritable dream team. We're focusing on principles of connected learning that link academic achievement, social networks, and personal interests with smart mentors to spur young people to learn anytime, anywhere. Hands-on, self-directed learning." That kind of hands-on, self-directed exploration is so important to kids' understanding of their world and their place in it. And museums, he says, are a key part of our work in this region. The center's report also describes two possible scenarios for the future of education in our country. One possible future scenario of education is a fractured landscape in which access to quality education is distributed as unequally as wealth, which means that only the better off students have the access to a rich array of learning experiences beyond the traditional public school. In this future, there is a widening gap between the learning experiences available to children depending on their family circumstances, where children in low-income neighborhoods are increasingly underserved, and where our paralyzing fear of change causes us to focus on narrow and limited measures of accountability. But the report from the Center of the Future Museums also paints a scenario of an infinitely brighter future. Catherine Prince, Senior Director of Strategic Foresight at KnowledgeWorks in Cincinnati, describes a coming future where, quote, "learning agents, learners, and other stakeholders put together a wide array of innovations along with long-established solutions in multiple ways to create a resilient and learner-centered learning ecosystem in which many right solutions intersect and adapt to meet learners' needs," end quote. This is a description of what she calls a vibrant learning grid, the grid that creates, and I quote, "a radically personalized learning ecosystem that meets the needs of all learners." Museums like this one, already are the prototypical personalized learning systems ready to be used in new and creative ways. In the vibrant learning grid, learning adapts to each child rather than expecting each child to adapt to school. In this future, school may take on many different forms. Learning will no longer be defined by time and place. It will be distributed throughout the community and integrated into a learner's day. Learning will be personalized, tailored to the needs, the interests, and the learning styles of individual students. Powerful data analytics will help us understand and integrate the factors needed for the academic, social, and emotional well-being of each child. New learning landscapes will encompass both geographic and virtual communities that support the kind of immersive, experiential, blended learning that we know fosters collaboration and creativity. Museums have a major role to play in building this future. At AAM, we already have documented hundreds of individual museum initiatives that begin to build the framework of the vibrant learning grid. Let me cite a few statistics looking at examples of museums' role in education from the macro level, or a few examples, I guess, is better. Obviously, technology is a critical element in building that vibrant learning grid. So, for example, museums are taking their educational resources to scale via the web, as you can see from the Henry Ford's Innovation 101 digital curriculum, designed to inspire the next generation of innovators and thinkers. And their Innovation Learning Accelerator has already trained over 5,000 teacher leaders in that topic of innovation and leadership. Museums are anchoring place-based, out-of-school learning as well. So, for example, the Pittsburgh Children's Museum Make Shop. Make Shop is a space for children and families to make, play, and design together using real stuff. The same materials, tools, and processes used by professional artists, builders, programmers, and creators of all kinds. It's a place where physical materials and digital media resources intersect, where visitors are encouraged to be curious, creative, experimental, and innovative. A team of skilled makers and educators is always on hand to help visitors translate their vision into tangible objects. Through special programs, you can make stuff alongside visiting indie crafters, hackers, and inventors. Now, the foregoing description is taken from the Pittsburgh Children's Museum website. If you want to know somebody from the museum field who's doing great things for the community and helping young people learn in new ways, go see Jane Warner, the amazing director of the Pittsburgh Children's Museum. Make Shop has gone on the road as well, going to regional schools and parks, and the museum is planning for satellite sites in the region. Is there a better way for children to learn than by making stuff themselves, thinking through and around obstacles, planning, and then doing and creating on their own? While our digital age enables museums to markedly extend the reach of their education programs, there is also a bit of a contradiction, which works in our favor. Another study done by the Center for the Future of Museums, published in 2011, titled Museums in Society 2034, found that despite living in a virtual world and embracing all things digital, young people still crave authenticity. The real thing is something they still seek, probably so they can tweet about it endlessly to all their friends. In a world characterized by glamour and glitz and celebrity, museums are among the last bastions of authenticity. When I took my own son about age 9 to see an icon of my youth, the U-505 submarine, at the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago, we stood outside, we looked at the pictures, we waited in line, we got inside, he pulled on my hand. I said, "What?" He said, "Dad, is this the real submarine?" Because Jamie wasn't going to waste his time standing in any fake submarine. He had to know that was it. So here's an example of a science museum that has created a remarkably engaging program, maybe not for the slightly squeamish, that through the web is reaching thousands of young scientists and maybe thousands of young veterinarians to be as well. On any given day, visitors and school children can engage in over 400 science-based experiments at San Francisco's Exploratorium. Using a transdisciplinary approach to explore the connections between science, art, and human perception, topics include everything from astronomy to nanotechnology. During school trips and teacher seminars, museum educators use an inquiry-based process to help relate science topics to the real world around their students. Perhaps their most popular experiment involves biology, demonstrating how a wonder of the mammalian world, the eyeball, translates light into perceptible images. Traditionally, a teacher would stand at the front of the class with a two-dimensional sheet of paper and talk about the eye. Very exciting. A much more effective approach, led by the Exploratorium staff, involves the dissection of a real cow eyeball, which happens several times a day and is also available to be seen on the web. Holding an eyeball, actual eyeball, trained museum educators describe how muscles, the very tiny little muscles, move the eye up and down. And as they remove the tissue that surrounds the eye, sorry, that's too much detail probably, the educator is able to show the students how that tissue cushions and protects the eye. The cornea is sliced open to demonstrate how it shields the more delicate parts of the eye. And finally, the pupil is available for the students to see how it opens and closes to regulate the light that flows into your eye from outside. By connecting lessons to the world around them, educators provide a lesson that we guarantee will not be forgotten anytime soon. So that's enough about eyeballs. The challenge to the museum field in the United States is to step up our game and help finish imagining and modeling the vibrant learning grid of the future before another generation of children grows up without the support they need to succeed in life, academically, economically, and socially. All museums should re-examine the roles that they play in learning, both in their geographic communities and in their digital reach, and assess how they can increase the depth of their impact. We need more museum schools where children can learn in immersive experiential environments. We need more museum mentorships in which learners can be guided and inspired by individuals in our profession. We need more museum resources, from curriculum guides to images and 3D digital files on objects, on the web in accessible formats designed to integrate with modern learning frameworks. We need more museum educators and curators teaching teachers and students through web-based distance education. In this internet age, there are few intrinsic limits to the ambitions of any museum for the scope and scale of its reach. The MIT OpenCourseware project served 100 million people in its first decade, and their goal is to reach 1 billion learners in the next 10 years. As Michael Edson, director of the Web and New Media Strategy at the Smithsonian Institution, has said, I quote, "Our dreams drive us forward. Museums accomplish wonderful things in society, but 1 billion learners, that is the kind of dream we in the museum field need to have." My point is not to provide a catalog of all that museums are doing in the realm of education today, nor is it to imagine all the possibilities that are available to museums in the realm of K-12 education. Museums of all types and sizes, in communities large and small, in every part of our country, have important resources that they bring to their educational role every single day. Trained educators, classrooms, libraries, IT capabilities, experts on a wide array of topics, volunteers. Every week in the United States, Americans donate 1 million hours of their time to museums. And these museums have collections that cover a wide array of types, from framed objects on walls to four-legged creatures and things with fins. Museums are places of learning and inspiration and excitement, but we are too often overlooked. The field is looking for new partners to help nurture generations of literate, inquisitive, creative, excited young people. And museums can help us get there. What I would say to communities, to mayors and school boards and governors that are looking to excite and engage a new generation of learners, that are looking to stimulate creative minds for what will certainly be a century of unprecedented and unimaginable creativity. What I would say to these communities is, find a museum, embrace a new partner, create a new future for education in your community. Thank you very much for having me today.